More and more information is coming out about the Gabby Petito case every single day, and of course she absolutely deserves to be brought to justice. Her family absolutely deserves to have peace, and everyone in her life deserves to know the truth. However, unfortunately, while Gabby Petito's case has become basically internet famous and is circulating very well throughout social media with constant updates and regular broadcasts and live streams, there are other people who went missing at around the same time, some of them even before Gabby, who have completely been thrown to the wayside and forgotten, and their cases are also still ongoing. People are still trying to bring them to justice. In some cases, the person hasn't even been found, such as in the case I'm about to discuss with you. I want to take the next few videos on my channel to talk to you about some of these people who are also missing and went missing around the same time as Gabby Petito, because I'm hoping that by shedding light on their cases and telling you about them, somebody out there might have some information, or people may find interest in these cases and want to blow it up so that it also becomes as famous as the Gabby Petito case, because everyone deserves to be brought home. Every family deserves justice and closure from something terrible that happened to someone that they love. So without further ado, let's discuss Cassidy Rainwater. Unfortunately, for those who have taken interest in Cassidy's case, there is not much known about her past or her personality. While there are several people on TikTok who have done their best to spread the word about Cassidy Rainwater, what little is available has become completely overshadowed by rumors and misinformation. Everything from rumors of Cassidy abusing drugs and losing her children to murmurs of cannibals in the woods abducting and killing her have clouded this case and caused immense confusion, to the point that investigators have actually had to make a statement asking people to cease the spread of misinformation and only mention confirmed facts when they announce them. So that is what I intend to do today. No frills, no rumors, only the facts that are known as of this moment. Let's begin with an interview. According to Ben, the father of one of Cassidy's children and a man who would prefer to remain anonymous as possible, Cassidy was going through a very hard time in the months leading up to her disappearance. Ben has stated that he believes she was even homeless at the time. He mentioned that he had spoken to her about this and offered to help her in whatever way he could as long as she could get herself to Kansas City. This is where I've seen already some conflicting information. In one article by Ozark First, it claims that Cassidy did manage to reach the destination and was temporarily staying in Ben's loft until she could get a better hold on her financial situation. However, the initial interview by KCTV5 stated that he was only planning on helping her and did not mention whether or not she ever made it to Kansas City. I'm sure we'll find out more information about this eventually, but I don't want to assume she made it to Ben's loft if I don't have 100% confirmation and there's already two different news articles that are saying different things. There has been a lot of speculation about whether or not Cassidy had custody of any of her children, since the son that she and Ben share is currently living with adoptive parents who are doing their best to shield him from this story. This child is 16, but I can still understand why the adoptive parents wouldn't want him to have to deal with the absolute horrors of knowing what's happened to his mother. As of right now, it is unknown why Cassidy ended up in the situation that she was found in, but as I mentioned before, rumors are abounding, so please do not spread any information unless you can prove that it is correct 100,000,000%. Whether she was a wonderful part of her community who never had a negative encounter with law enforcement, or a woman struggling with a lot of personal demons, she still didn't deserve the fate that has befallen her. Please always remember when researching crime cases that humans are multifaceted creatures who do make mistakes, and their mistakes do not necessarily make them bad people. It just means they were going through a hard time. Ben and Cassidy had never been married, but they were still on friendly terms when she vanished. This is another confusing area in Ben's testimony. In the KCTV article, it is stated that Ben had not had any real contact with Cassidy since May of 2019. But in Ozark First, it states that she may have been living with him. There could simply be some missing details in these articles, and for that reason, I say take this with a grain of salt. It could just mean that he spoke to her periodically in a friendly way, but it isn't like they were texting back and forth on a weekly basis. Now, there was one part of the KCTV article that really struck me, and that was a quote by Ben where he said, "It's kind of rare for her to disappear. We talked several times a year." This statement about Cassidy seems as though she's a homebody, almost the polar opposite of Gabby Petito. So while it was normal for Gabby Petito to disappear for chunks of time since she was on the road traveling a lot, it was extremely rare and strange for Cassidy Rainwater to disappear without telling anyone where she was going. Now for the details of the case itself. We don't currently know everything about this case as it is still ongoing, but this segment will be based around what is currently available to the public. Cassidy Rainwater went missing on the 25th of July 2021 and was reported missing by one of her relatives on August 25th, 2021. During the initial search for Cassidy, an anonymous tip was sent to the FBI on September 16th, 2021, stating that Cassidy was being held captive in a cage on Moon Valley Road near Lebanon. Nothing more was currently known about who this anonymous tipper was, or how they were able to find where Cassidy was and what state she had been found in at the time. The house that Cassidy was reported as being seen in belonged to James Phelps, a 58-year-old man. It is unknown what his occupation is or if he even has one. James Phelps is also close to another man, 56-year-old Timothy Norton. Photos of Cassidy Rainwater in a partially nude state and locked in a cage were found on the dark web, and this was more than enough to prompt law enforcement into going to Phelps's home. A detective went to Phelps's home on September 7th, 2021 to follow up on the tip from before. During the initial interview with Phelps, he stated that Cassidy had been temporarily staying in his home because she was going through a hard time, and he wanted to help her out until she got back on her feet. He also mentioned that Cassidy said once she was through staying in Phelps's home, she was planning on leaving for Colorado. However, he seems to be the only one with this information. Nobody in Cassidy's life that she was close to has confirmed that she was ever going to Colorado, and as I mentioned before, she was more of a homebody and would generally have told at least one person if she was planning on making a move like that. As the interview progressed, Phelps told the detective that one night in June, about a month prior to her disappearance, Cassidy suddenly left his house and got into a strange car that was parked at the end of his driveway. According to Phelps, after seeing her get into the mysterious car, he never saw or heard from her again. Immediately, the detective saw red flags in this recollection by Phelps, because the interview was taking place inside his home, not at a police station, and the detective noticed that none of Cassidy's belongings were in the home, and the area that she had supposedly been staying in looked as though it had been stripped out completely and all evidence of her had been done away with. Obviously, this struck the detective as odd, one reason being that if Cassidy had suddenly decided to leave without a word in a strange car, chances are that means she would have left in a hurry, and it's highly likely she would have accidentally left some non-essential belongings behind. I mean, if I were going to jump into a mysterious car in the middle of the night, I wouldn't be worrying about every single thing that I own. I'd worry about what I absolutely need for that journey. Another reason is that it does make sense that between June and September, Phelps would have cleaned up the area Cassidy had been staying in, but why did he have to do an absolute crime scene cleanup grade job scrubbing it down? That seems really strange. A little over 2 weeks after the interview, on September 16th, 2021, the investigative team were able to obtain a warrant to search Phelps's phone to determine whether or not there was any truth in the anonymous tip involving photos of Cassidy in a cage. Sure enough, they ended up finding 7 different photos of Cassidy in a partially nude state and in a cage on Phelps's cell phone. There have also been some reports of a video of her in the cage, and that has not been released to the public, and let's hope it never is. It was undeniable in the photos that this was taking place in Phelps's residence. This was, of course, more than enough reason to arrest him that day. Interestingly, almost a week after investigators captured Phelps, Timothy Norton was brought in for questioning on September 19th and 20th of 2021. Norton's responses to interview questions did not match up with what Phelps had told them, but it was determined that Norton is actually the one who was lying. On the 19th, he told the investigators that he was an over-the-road trucker and that he was currently residing in his work truck, but at the time of the interview, he wasn't actually actively working. He also denied having any knowledge of who Cassidy was or what was happening at Phelps's house. When investigators brought Norton back for further questioning on the 20th, he changed his story and admitted not only to knowing who Cassidy was and that she was in fact staying in Phelps's home, but he was also very aware of the fact that she was being caged and tortured. He even admitted to helping Phelps restrain Cassidy and force her into the cage on July 24th, so he was very much an active part in everything that happened to her. Now we come to the very strange details that were released on October 12, 2021, so not that long ago. Both Norton and Phelps were arrested in September and charged. They were due to speak in a video call court date on October 5th, but something very suspicious took place on October 4th. Less than 24 hours before the men were due in court, Phelps's house burned to the ground. This is a quote from an article by KSN. According to the report obtained by Ozarks First, when officers got to the scene, they found incendiary devices made with mortar tubes, balloons, and coil fuses with a tripwire attached. While the home was burning to ash, the bomb squad was sent out to investigate the scene because the tripwire was actually found while the flames were being extinguished. The initial fire took place at around 10 p.m. that night, and the bomb squad arrived after 1 in the morning. This whole thing is bizarre to me. I understand that someone who is being charged with 1 count of first-degree kidnapping, facilitating a felony, inflicting injury, and terrorizing may want to get rid of any evidence proving these things, but both Phelps and Norton were in jail at the time of the fire. Investigators have not released any information about the fire other than the fact that it was proven to be arson. So there's no telling whether they had timed a bomb to go off at one of their court trials, or if it was some kind of accomplice or even some third party who had nothing to do with the case. Personally, given how disturbingly good these men seem to be at their grotesquerie, I wouldn't be surprised if they set a bomb with a timer as a big middle finger to everyone around them, but there's absolutely no evidence of this as of yet. There is something else about Norton and Phelps that struck me as interesting. Phelps is listed as having been the property owner, as in the home, but Norton was also listed as being the homeowner in 1992 and 1993. It is unknown whether they knew each other when Norton owned the residence, or even if they've used it for anything since then. It was just strange to me that both of them have owned the house, so they must have known every inch of it. Ozarks First also did their own investigation and found that apparently the land the cabin had been on before it burned down is owned by someone else entirely. The person who owns the land has not come forward, and I found no evidence proving that he is being investigated or is a part of the case at all. So did they just have someone build a cabin in a wooded area that didn't even belong to them? Did the person who built the cabin, who by the way is yet a different person than the property owner, know about their nasty nature and build it for them anyway to keep it hidden? It's scary to think just how much we don't know about these men. Was Cassidy their first torture victim, or could they have been doing this for years? Only time will tell. The people living in the community that Phelps's home once stood have been very shaken up by all of this. Some of them have even been reported as being very upset because they had recently moved to this rural area from the city to get away from this kind of thing, so they're very traumatized by everything that's happening. As a quick side note, I want to mention, as someone who has lived in rural areas my entire life, being away from the big city does not necessarily mean that you're safe. Violence and danger comes in all different forms, and there's a reason that people in rural areas keep guns most of the time. Never assume that because you are in a more sparsely populated area, it automatically means nothing will ever happen to you. As of the October 5th hearing, all that we know is that preliminary hearings have been set for Norton and Phelps on November 5th at 9:30 a.m. As of now, there is also no bond for either of them. Investigators have not shared whether or not Cassidy has been found, but it is doubtful that she has, because Ben did mention that he doesn't know whether she's alive or not, but he doesn't think this will end well. It's fairly unlikely that investigators wouldn't at least tell friends and family of Cassidy that they at least found her remains or some proof that she may be alive, even if they couldn't share further details. So as of now, she is still considered missing. If you have any information regarding anything that happened to Cassidy Rainwater, please contact the Dallas County Sheriff's Office. Her loved ones deserve closure, and she deserves to be brought home no matter what state she's in. I hope that even though my platform is extremely small, this video might help boost her story and make it more widespread on social media like Gabby Petito's case is. Until then, though, please stay safe, spread Cassidy's story as much as you can, and as always, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anyone else thinks about it, and I'll see all of you again soon.